imagine walking into this massive ancient cathedral.
Oh, yeah. Like the really grand one.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
The stained glass is perfectly arranged. The pews are all bolted to the floor in these rigid straight lines. And there's this very clear, heavily edited list of rules posted right by the door.
Setting the tone before you even get inside.
Yeah, exactly. Now, imagine someone walking in and just taking a sledgehammer to all of it.
Wow. Okay.
Just shattering the glass, ripping up the pews, and entirely shredding that rule book. I mean, that is essentially what today's source material does to the structure of modern Christianity.
It really does. And honestly, if you look at the historical and theological context we're diving into today, that sledgehammer isn't just, a metaphor for some new cultural movement. It's a return to a very specific, explosive moment in history.
Right.
The central thesis we are exploring here is the whole idea of leaving behind those physical temples built by man. The argument is that the ultimate religious structure was permanently rendered obsolete.
Rendered obsolete the exact moment the physical body of Jesus Christ was broken. Right?
Exactly, yeah. Which the texts describe as the veil of the temple being torn in two. That act was meant to destroy the barrier, allowing anyone to bypass the rigid religious hierarchy and enter the Holy of Holies directly.
So you can come boldly to the throne of grace.
Precisely. Bypassing the middleman entirely.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. We're exploring a really provocative question for you today. Like, what if you could entirely bypass feel-good faith and traditional institutionalized religion and instead experience a completely raw, unfiltered relationship with the divine?
It's a huge question.
It really is. So we're pulling from a collection of teachings and philosophies today from a ministry called Jesus Raw, which is led by John Scalzo.
Yeah, and the mission for this deep dive is to basically unpack Scalzo's radical deconstruction of modern religion. We want to explore how he reframes the biblical text, not as a legal rule book, but as an epic love story.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because Scalzo does not start this argument quietly. Like, his boldest claim right out of the gate is that Jesus did not come to start a religion.
Yeah.
At all.
Right. To really grasp the scale of the paradigm shift he's proposing, we have to recognize that he isn't suggesting a slight renovation to how people practice their faith.
No, not at all.
It's a complete teardown. He's arguing that the entire foundation of what modern culture considers religion is fundamentally antithetical to the original message. He's essentially saying humanity has spent 2,000 years trying to stitch that torn veil back together.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, trying to rebuild the walls that were explicitly torn down just to keep the divine safely contained in a box.
Yeah, and instead of a religion, he paints this picture of a Jesus who came to shake foundations, to break chains, and basically set captives free. And to back this up, the ministry leans heavily on a very specific, aggressive piece of imagery from Matthew 10.34.
Yeah, the sword verse.
Right, where Jesus says, "Do not think that I came to bring peace on earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword."
And that choice of the word sword is really the hinge for this entire first argument. I mean, a sword is not a tool for building. It's not for negotiating.
It's for severing.
Exactly. It cuts things apart. Scalzo is emphasizing that this isn't some cozy, domesticated spirituality where you just sprinkle a little bit of inspiration onto your weekend.
Right, like a self-help quote.
Right. A sword violently divides the authentic from the artificial.
And what he is severing, according to Scalzo, is the oppressive structure of the time. Because Jesus wasn't just wandering around giving nice sermons on hillsides, Scalzo points out that Jesus actively hated the ruling government of his day.
He really did.
The text notes that he frequently went into the church, so the synagogues and temples, primarily to confront and accuse the leaders who were abusing the poor and the needy.
Which completely flips the script on the popular image of a passive teacher, doesn't it? It positions him as a radical disruptor because the religious elite of the first century weren't just, a spiritual guy.
Well, they had real power.
Immense political and economic power. They were the establishment. So when Jesus was flipping tables in the temple, he wasn't just making a theological point. He was directly attacking an abusive, corrupt system that was exploiting the vulnerable.
And Scalzo uses a pretty provocative geopolitical analogy here to illustrate this dynamic.
He does, yeah. And just to be clear for everyone listening, we are strictly impartially reporting on the analogy the author uses here to explain his worldview. We aren't endorsing any political statements.
Right, absolutely. We're just looking at the text.
Exactly. So in the text, Scalzo compares this to his own view of modern China. He states that he hates the Communist Party of China, but he deeply loves the Chinese people.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and he uses that modern framework to explain how he believes Jesus operated in the first century.
It's a really stark way to draw a line between a regime and its citizens. Like, in Scalzo's view, Jesus entirely separated the corrupt, abusive ruling systems, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, from the innocent, hardened people who were trapped beneath them.
Yeah, Jesus hated the system that was crushing his sheep. But he had boundless compassion for the sheep themselves. The sword was meant for the system, but the grace was meant for the people.
Right. And think about how exhausting it is for you to constantly track your own moral performance within a rigid system like that. If we put Scalzo's framework into a more modern context, he's essentially saying Jesus isn't just a new app you install on your existing phone to make it run a little better.
Right, you can't just download the Jesus app onto a Pharisee operating system.
Exactly. It's a complete wipe of a corrupted hard drive.
Yeah.
You have to delete the tradition and religion software entirely before you can even begin to understand the actual message.
But, wiping an operating system leaves you with a dead phone.
True.
A blank slate isn't a theology. If Scalzo is taking a sword to traditional religion and tearing down the physical temples, he has to replace that infrastructure with something else.
So what does he replace it with?
Well, this is where he completely redefines the word faith.
And that brings us to one of the most startling questions in the material. He asks, what if faith is not believing? Which, on the surface, sounds like a complete oxymoron.
It really does.
Isn't believing the entire point of any spiritual framework?
You would certainly think so, based on the standard cultural definition we've all kind of inherited. But Scalzo points out a glaring logical problem with just believing.
Okay, what is it?
He argues that Adam and Eve, and even Satan and his followers, do not have a problem believing in God.
Wait, really? Satan?
Yeah, they believe perfectly fine. They have firsthand, undeniable knowledge of the reality of the divine.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that. Belief isn't their hurdle at all. They aren't atheists struggling with intellectual doubt.
Precisely. Scalzo argues that their actual problem, and by extension, the core problem of the human condition, is a refusal to surrender their rebellious will. Mere belief requires zero surrender. It's just an intellectual acknowledgement of a fact. Like, I can believe that a parachute functions correctly, but if I refuse to strap it on and jump out of the plane, my belief is entirely useless.
I struggle with that word surrender, though. Let me push back on this on behalf of anyone listening. Because to modern ears, yielding your will sounds dangerously close to brainwashing.
It does, yeah.
It sounds like giving up your autonomy or being coerced into this mindless obedience. How does Jesus Ra keep that concept of surrender from just being an oppressive demand?
That is the crucial tension right there. And Scalzo answers it by diving into the actual linguistic roots of the original text, which I think fundamentally changes the texture of the conversation.
Okay, how so?
Well, the surrender doesn't happen through threats or force. The Greek word used for faith in the New Testament is pisteo, and pisteo is actually better translated as allowing yourself to be persuaded.
Allowing yourself to be persuaded. Wow, okay. That implies a dialogue, not a dictatorship. It implies someone is making a compelling case to you, and you're actively, willingly choosing to yield to it because it's beautiful or true.
It shifts the dynamic entirely from passive intellectual belief to an active relational trust. And Scalzo takes it a step further by breaking down the Greek word for conscience, which is synodesis. It literally means to see together with.
To see together with. I love that. That completely removes the idea of an angry boss barking orders from a cloud.
Right.
It's about a shared vision. It's about alignment.
It is about alignment over compliance. When you're aligned with someone, your wills merge organically. But, Scalzo also highlights the severe cost of choosing rebellion over that alignment.
Right. The stakes are still high.
Very high. He cites 1 Samuel 15, which states that to obey is better than sacrifice. And the text explicitly equates rebellion with witchcraft and stubbornness with idolatry.
Okay, those are incredibly heavy words. Witchcraft and idolatry. It almost feels like a sudden escalation in tone from the whole being persuaded thing.
It does feel heavy, but the underlying logic makes sense within his framework. They represent the ultimate elevation of the self.
Oh, I see.
Stubbornness is idolatry because you're essentially worshiping your own will above all else. You're demanding to be the absolute center of the universe, refusing to see together with the divine.
But then how do you overcome that?
Well, the mechanism Scalzo uses to explain how we overcome that stubbornness is fascinating. He explicitly says that God's love quenches the fire of our rebellion.
Quenches it, not crushes it.
Exactly. When you realize the authority figure isn't trying to punish you, your defensive walls naturally drop. You stop fighting because there's nothing to fight against.
Right.
The divine doesn't force compliance. Rather, as Scalzo writes, God allures us to say yes, to voluntarily say, let your will be done in my life.
Allures. Man, that is a word you expect in a romance novel, not a theological treatise.
Yeah.
But that concept of being gently persuaded or allured only works if the authority figure you're dealing with isn't terrifying.
Yeah.
You cannot be allured by a tyrant.
No, you can't. Which leads directly to the central, truly transformative question Scalzo is posing to his audience. What if God is more lover than lawyer?
Oh, wow. Lover over lawyer. It's like the difference between signing a strict prenuptial agreement where you're terrified of stepping out of line and losing everything versus a healthy, thriving marriage where your good behavior isn't forced by a contract.
Right.
It's just a natural byproduct of loving your partner. Because a lawyer deals in loopholes, infractions, and penalties. A lawyer demands that you prove your case, provide evidence of your goodness, and earn your standing in the courtroom.
But a lover deals in connection, devotion, and shared experience. A lover desires intimacy, not just legal compliance.
Yeah.
And this brings us to the actual practical methodology that the Jesus Raw Ministry promotes to live this out. It's hidden right there in the name. RAW stands for Rest, Abide, Worship.
Rest, abide, worship. Notice what is entirely missing from that list.
What's that?
Striving, earning, producing, managing your sin ledger. None of that is in there.
Exactly. Scalzo urges the reader with this incredible emphatic line. He writes, just let God love you for a change.
I love that.
He cites 1 John 4.10, emphasizing that true love is not that we loved God, but that he loved us first. The argument is that merely receiving this unconditional love automatically produces all the spiritual fruit you've always desired.
See, that feels almost too simple, and frankly, maybe a bit offensive to the part of us that wants to earn our gold stars.
Oh, definitely. Our egos hate it.
We're so conditioned by modern culture and modern religion to think that spiritual growth requires this grueling 10-step program, early morning routines, and constant self-flagellation. But Scalzo is saying the fruit is merely a byproduct of receiving the love.
It is an organic byproduct. I mean, think about a relationship where you feel completely safe, completely known, and completely loved. You naturally want to honor that person.
You don't even have to think about it.
Right. You don't need a rule book to tell you not to betray them. Your affection for them makes betrayal repulsive to you. That is the quenching of rebellion Scalzo was talking about. When you rest in that love and you abide in it, meaning you stay there, you dwell in it, worship is just the spontaneous, natural response.
So how does a person practically do that, though? How do you just abide in a world that is designed to keep you agitated, distracted, and constantly performing?
It's tough. But Scalzo points to Jesus' own habits to answer this. He cites Luke 5.1, which notes that Jesus himself continued his habit of retiring to lonely spots and praying.
So getting away from everything.
Yeah, what's vital here is the recognition that the modern world is relentlessly noisy. That corrupted operating system we talked about earlier.
Oh, yeah.
It's constantly sending you notifications, societal demands, and anxieties about your status. To experience that raw, unfiltered relationship, to step past the torn veil and into the Holy of Holies, you have to manually disconnect from the noise of the outer courts.
You really do.
You have to find those lonely spots. It's not just a nice self-care routine. It's a spiritual survival mechanism.
And when you do that, when you unplug and just receive, Scalzo points out that something remarkable happens with forgiveness. The source says the Lord came to forgive, and that his forgiveness is meant to overflow in you so that you can give his forgiveness to others.
It's a chain reaction.
He quotes John 20, where Jesus breathes the Holy Spirit on his followers and gives them the power to forgive. It's not just a transaction where your personal slate is wiped clean. It literally transforms you into a conduit of that exact same grace for the world around you.
If we pull back and connect all these dots, the sword that cuts away the abusive religious institution, the torn veil that grants direct access, the redefining of faith as a yielding of the will to love, and the practice of resting and abiding it, reveals Scalzo's ultimate view of what the Bible actually is.
Okay, and what is that? Because it's not an encyclopedia of historical facts.
It's definitely not.
And it is definitely not a legal code designed to micromanage human behavior.
According to Jesus Raw, The macro narrative of the entire biblical text is a sweeping cosmic love story.
A love story.
Yeah. Scalzo frames the entire biblical narrative as a cosmic marriage between heaven, which is framed as the masculine initiator, and earth, which is framed as the feminine receiver.
Okay, that's beautiful.
He traces this romantic through line from the very opening pages to the final chapter. It starts with the first marriage of Adam and Eve in the garden. Then, as the narrative progresses, it moves to the turbulent, passionate relationship between the nation of Israel and Jehovah.
And he grounds this in these beautiful poetic texts,
Right.
like Isaiah 62, where it says, "Never again will you be called forsaken or the desolate. Your new name will be God's delight and the bride of God, for the Lord delights in you and will claim you as his bride."
Yeah, it's powerful stuff. And this all culminates, according to the text in the New Testament, with the relationship between Christ and his bride, ending in the ultimate eternal celebration described in Revelation, which is the marriage supper of the Lamb.
Which completely shifts the required action for you, the listener. If the overarching story of the universe is a romance leading to a wedding feast, your role changes dramatically.
It really
Instead of, do these 10 exhausting things so the judge doesn't throw the book at you, Scalzo's literal instruction at the end of this narrative is written in all caps. He says, just get ready to dance.
I love that so much. It is a profound shift in posture. It's an invitation to a celebration, not a summons to a courtroom.
Because a courtroom requires a lawyer,
Right.
defending your case, hiding your flaws, and
Yeah.
arguing for leniency. But a celebration requires a lover, where you are fully exposed, fully known, and entirely accepted.
Exactly. And that completely recontextualizes the sword we started with at the beginning of this deep dive.
Oh, right?
The sword wasn't brought to harm the individual. It was brought to sever the red tape of the courtroom. It was the sledgehammer taken to the cathedral walls, brought to destroy the artificial barriers so that the individual could finally reach the dance floor.
We have covered incredible ground today. We started by looking at a rigid, heavily structured cathedral of traditional religion, and we watched Scalzo's framework, the teachings of Jesus Ra, basically take a sword to those foundations.
Yeah, tearing it all down.
We explored how Jesus confronted oppressive structures to protect the vulnerable, drawing a really sharp line between corrupt systems and hurting people.
And we looked at the destruction of the physical temple, leaving the old man-made structures behind so we could enter the Holy of Holies through the torn veil.
Direct access.
Exactly. We saw how this completely reimagines the concept of faith, shifting it from a passive intellectual belief to an active, willing surrender, allowing yourself to be persuaded by love.
To see together with?
Yeah.
That great definition of conscience as alignment rather than blind obedience is definitely going to stick with me.
It fundamentally changes the dynamic of spiritual growth. And all of it rests on that core theological pivot, viewing the divine as a lover rather than a lawyer, which transforms the entire biblical text into a grand romance, ending in a joyous celebration.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought, something to genuinely mull over as you go about your day. Scalzo throws down a very direct challenge. He asks, what if you get quiet and unplug from this world?
It is the ultimate test of what remains when the noise stops.
It really is.
Yeah.
Think about your own life right now listening to this. If you actually stripped away all the external expectations, all the societal noise, and all those rigid religious or cultural rulebooks you've been carrying around in your head, what would happen?
Yeah, what's left?
When the institutional walls fall down and the veil is torn, what kind of relationship with the divine, or even just with your own truest self, would be waiting for you in that unfiltered silence? When you finally stop trying to prove your case to a lawyer, are you ready to learn how to dance? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.